Gum Rattler. So, all of you probably know people have a really bad habit of always chewing gum. But there was this one boy who had such a bad habit that, well, it might have saved his life to be that bad of a habit. So, his name was Tommy, and he loved gum. He wouldn't chew one, or two, or three pieces at a time. He'd chew at least 7 pieces at a time. And so he'd stuff them in his mouth, and he'd chomp on his gum on his way to school. And he'd chomp on his gum on the way into his classroom, and he'd chomp on his gum as he sat down. And the teacher was trying to teach the class a lesson, but nobody could pay attention because Tommy was in his seat chomping on his gum. And so the teacher said, "Tommy, go spit out that gum right now." And Tommy got out of his seat and went over to the trash can, and he spit out his gum. He was very sad. But, as you know, most people with a really bad case of chewing gum might have a second pack. And he had one right up here in his pocket. But sometimes he'd forget to take that gum out. So when his mom put his shirt in the wash, she'd take it out after being washed, and there'd be a huge gum splatter stain all over his shirt. She didn't really want to go buy him new shirts because, well, it would be a waste of money since he'd probably do the same to them. So she made him wear those. One day, Tommy was walking around in the desert because it was the perfect day to walk around in the desert. He was walking and he stepped on something. He thought it was a rock, but when he looked down, it was a rattle. It was a rattlesnake's rattle. And the rattlesnake couldn't warn him because he was stepping on the rattle. Tommy didn't know what to do, so he froze. And the rattlesnake slithered up his leg and came up and looked him right in the eye. Tommy looked at the rattlesnake. He had big eyes and big fangs, and he looked like he was about ready to strike. And finally he did, and he struck right at the heart. But nothing happened to Tommy. He looked down, and the rattlesnake's fangs were stuck in the gum. And the rattlesnake kept on chomping and chomping and chomping, and the bubble got bigger and bigger and bigger until Tommy had enough strength to lift up his hand and pop it. And the rattlesnake went flying in the air, and Tommy went flying back and hit his head on a rock. And he was laying on the ground until he was shaken and woken up by a lady. And he said, "Who are you?" And the lady said, "Well, I'm your mother, of course. Now get up. You're supposed to be at school." And Tommy said, "Well, I don't remember." And she said, "You hit your head on a rock, didn't you?" And then he did remember. And he told her the whole story about the gum and the desert and the rattlesnake and the giant bubble. But she thought that since he hit his head, he was going a little crazy. So she said, "Why don't we just take you to the doctors?" So they were walking back home from the desert, and he kept on insisting and insisting and insisting it happened. But she didn't believe him. So they were walking, and she still said, "Tommy, you're just imagining things." And he said, "No, I'm not." And she didn't believe him. Well, not until the rattlesnake came out of the sky and hit her on the head. So Tommy's mom didn't believe, but did you? And that's my story.
Yes.